time to hate. Whatever I am doing, it's all too late.
So I'm single, and it's interesting being a single woman who's also a professional in the field of psychology using dating apps. And I frequently get the question of, why are you single? What's wrong with you that you're single? An assumption that there's something very defective about me because I'm single. Yet I've been going along with trying to meet people the way a lot of people meet people these days for dating, which is through apps. And I've primarily been using apps to meet men. And I finally got off of apps because I think that they're really not good for me. They've pretty heavily influenced my perspective on men. I mean, personally, and I don't know if I can really separate my personal opinion and my professional opinion in this area. It's kind of like a blend, but I perceive that there's like a higher than normal level of like sociopathic behaviors coming out of men on dating apps. And I've described it as kind of like going to a bar, but this bar, all the sociopaths go to the bar. And it's like a wonderful meeting place for them. And here I am swiping through going, oh no, or I'm having interactions, and eventually I'm like, oh, ow, no, oh my goodness, this is traumatic. This will be traumatic trying to engage with this person. To the point where I was like, I don't want to go to that bar anymore. And it made me curious. It's made me very curious to talk to other people about their experiences being on dating apps, and talk to men and women about it, both hetero and gay and queer and stuff. And also curious looking at the research, because I want to understand like what is actually going on dating apps. Like, why am I having this experience? Why are a lot of women having this experience actually? And for me, I know I've become kind of cynical about my capacity to find a stable, solid, long-term relationship. And if it's how that would actually be possible, given that what's considered the normal mode of meeting people these days for relationships is through apps. Yet the people I'm meeting are not people that I want to be in a long-term relationship with. So this is, to start off, my experience so far. It's sort of a generalization about where I'm at on this topic. What about you?
Yeah, well, interesting. What really struck me, like that you said, it's gotten so bad that you had to basically say goodbye to all of it, and it happens to a lot of women. And then I was wondering, okay, what kind of women am I seeing there? So I'm using a couple of apps, and I, from the beginning, my experience was changing a lot over the course of time. Of course, there's a lot that concerns like my personal motivation to go there, aside from, of course, trying to find a partner. Because I had, with my background, I found I had to work through the entire process of what kind of a relationship do I want, who am I in a relationship? What is the partner that I want? Things like this. And so this was constantly going on at the same time while I was trying to look for a partner. And of course, to be fair, and this is now getting into the things that you were talking about, also answering a lot of questions on the issue of sexuality. Now, why does this feed into what you said? Well, it might feed into it from a certain perspective in terms of, okay, there's no seriousness here. It's just like trying himself out and whatever, using the world as the playground. Which would actually be kind of a recommendation of what one of my psychotherapists once told me, like, yeah, you have to try yourself out. I mean, that's probably not what she meant exactly, but in the end, come think of it, it's not even a similarity. It is trying myself out at some point. Okay, now this means, of course, it raises the questions, am I one of those narcissists that's in there? And we can get into this later. But my experience from the perspective that you just brought up, which means what's this on the other side there? What's that? What's going on the screen? What's the person that has put up this profile that I'm just deciding on swiping left or right or giving it a yes or no, ups and thumbs up and thumbs down? I had to learn how to read profiles. And I'm not saying I'm good at it. And of course, reading a profile becomes significantly harder the less information is on it. Which then, if you streamline this to a certain focal point, then you would, in the end up with probably a fake account or bot account. I mean, I don't think that there's actual bots on Tinder, but definitely fake accounts. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is not what we want to talk about. But I'm bringing it up because if there's little information in the profile, I'm skeptical. Okay, so for the sole reason or the simple reason that I think it might be a fake, and if the pictures are extremely well and so forth, it almost looks like out of a professional model catalog or whatever. I mean, it's like, okay, probably fake. Anyway, but the more information there is, the more I'm also thinking, what does it do with me? And I noticed that I started to look for some keywords. One of the keywords was eye level, for example. So if the profile, God, I'm now giving away all my dating secrets. So if I'm if I'm reading the term eye level, then I thought, okay, there's a partner that or potential partner that is capable of leading their own life. There's some maturity, there's some in German we say Selbstständigkeit, which means you can be yourself, you don't need somebody else, and you wanna meet on that level. You want to meet on that level and be able of kind of keeping up. And I'm not meaning this in a competition kind of sense. So, but what it then boiled down to in the end was an understanding, and that went along. I cannot stress this enough. It went along with my own progress in terms of personal development. Yeah, I mean, let's call it what it was, psychotherapy in the end. And I noticed that there was something that I would call being able to connect with somebody on a empathetic level. And I'm looking for different synonyms since I discovered this part in myself a couple of years ago, but until now, I haven't found a better term than connection. So, and I mean, you can probably dissect this into things like being kind, being able to follow what's going on the other side, also being self-reflective, and things like this. I could go on here for a long time, but and then I started going through the profiles, like, okay, is there somebody who actually can open up, can open their heart? And it turned out that the amount of profiles that I would think are matching this criteria is low.
Yeah.
And the and the whole picture, this picture, because I don't know, I'm already talking for pretty long, I think. So the picture only gets complete when I talk a little bit about the not so good matches. So which means that, okay, there was a match, and then I went to the date, and I was really nervous in the beginnings of my online dating time, and for various other reasons other than just starting it. But I got the impression, man, dating apps, this is just where the incapable people for relationships are ended up with. So they're basically just the what's it called, the $1 store for mating material. And this might be the flip side of the narcissist male guys, which is, of course, the narcissist male guys, I think, suffer from the same stuff, and I'm not an expert in terms of narcissism or what that even professionally means. But what I'm saying is, or what I want to say is, that I met a lot of women that I had the strong impression of, I am not surprised why you are still single. I'm not talking to you, Ava, but I'm saying that I was sitting across this table and I thought, no, there is no connection coming up. And back in the days, I was more focusing on terms like, okay, there's like neuroses all the way, which is okay because we all have them. We all have our packages and stuff like this. The point is, these women were not able to look in the mirror and be true to themselves about this kind of things. So if they get tipped off by whatever kind of misinterpretation in the conversation that happened, they got tipped off, and there was no chance to getting them back. And can I tell 2 anecdotes?
Yeah.
The first anecdote is really quick. It goes like this. I asked the women on the other side of the table, why are you still single? And she freaked out. Why are you asking me this? It's not your business. Something like this. I mean, I'm making it up a little bit.
That is a very triggering question for a woman.
It's like, yeah, see, but the point is, okay, but the point is, so this goes on now for a little bit longer. The thing is that I thought it's a legitimate question. And the point is that if you are able to connect and also be able to open up, you can say like, yeah, there's something that didn't go so well in my life, and I think it's because of this or whatever. And sure, it's an online dating situation, or it's an actual dating situation, but it started with online, and it started with a very profane kind of setup. That's what I want to say. But still, I mean, at one point, cut the small talk. I mean, this is just my advice for if you want to be successful in dating, cut the small talk. And better sooner than later. And of course, if you cut the small talk, you better have the strength to open up. And why is it strength? I mean, you know this, I'm pretty sure. Of course, it's because you have to show yourself being vulnerable. Yes, you're opening the door that somebody could kick in. And well, if you want to be in a relationship with somebody, you have to take that risk. Okay, so that was number one. I was like, what's going on? I mean, I knew this woman, that she just proved my point. You're not able because you cannot face your neurosis or whatever's going on there. I mean, in a nutshell, of course, I'm just guessing, but there was something that I felt she just can't, she can't connect, and that's why I cannot connect to her. And for that matter, we'll just leave it like this. The other story is a little
Did
bit
she
longer.
ask you in return though, why you're single?
No, because the date basically ended at that note.
Oh,
She was so like, and I was like, okay, and I think she was about to finish it, yeah. And in a sense, so thanks for that question. I think I brought up the question because I wanted to say why I'm single,
hmm.
which would be opening up a lot.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, also I mean, I have to say it was not only this like backwards way of trying to bring my stuff on the table. I was really interested because I was single for a long time and still am, and or again, and I was interested. What is it with other guys, people, girls, women?
Yeah.
Why is it with them? What happened there? What's
Yeah.
their story that I can maybe learn something from? And I'm very happy to tell my story, but I mean, I asked first. Okay.
I mean, it occurs to me, what would it be like if we could remove asking that question to people? Like, I feel like there's a lot of stigma that women especially get for being single versus men. And I wonder what it would be like if we, for instance, you were in a space where you were really wanting to be able to connect, right? And that was the purpose. But I know for me, when I get asked that question, there's a lot of men who ask that specifically because they're looking to like pick it apart and criticize. They're not coming from a place of like wanting to be open and sharing, right?
Interesting.
So,
Okay, but would
I
be
wonder
the
what it would, but I wonder what it would be like if you had said, I want to connect more deeply and I want to share a bit about why I think I'm still single. And you just were the person who started that. Like, I wonder how that could have gone different. But I mean, granted, it sounds like she needed to work with her triggers there, and like her emotional response was so strong that she couldn't, repair with you, which is kind of, I mean, I think that's an example of how maybe it would be in relationship with her if you had gone further. But like it occurs to me too, like I'm curious about why people are still single when I meet them, like us, like older people who are like, not married and don't have children. It's like, there is that question all the time. Like, well, wait, why haven't you settled down yet?
Sure. Well, so about the question, if it went differently, if I started it differently, of course it would have went differently.
Yeah.
And because the way you phrased it was the very acknowledging and respectful way of introducing such a question. Now, this already shows
I
you.
think I could benefit from doing that too. I'm saying what you could have, but I'm realizing now, like maybe that's a good way for me to bring up, like, like here, I'll go first.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, okay, when we're talking about different levels now, the first level would be the main thing of that you want to find out if you can connect to the other person, right? And everything else that comes after this is just how do you find that out? And of course, you can find it out about talking about why are you still single. You can find it out by talking about how are you in bed. You can find it out by talking, like, really putting your finger into sensitive issues. That's basically what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And the fact that I asked the question how I asked it basically tells you that it was a long time ago. Because I wouldn't ask it the way, not only because of this experience, of course, I mean, it taught me a lesson also, but I would ask it differently because, oh wow, because these days I wouldn't have to. I'm not saying that I'm psychic and I can tell what the other person's reasons are for being still single. I'm saying that this whole approach of how can I connect has changed on my end. I think it would be even easier for me now to get there, because I think it's now easier to talk to me in the meanwhile.
Yeah.
And so the situation was a little bit uncomfortable, of course, at that point. And I'm having problem finding my thoughts, because my mind constantly keeps wandering to the second story that I want
the
to
second
tell.
story I want to
So
hear.
sorry, it doesn't mean that I really
Sorry, I
insist
keep
on. It's just
interrupting.
because I think it has a lot to do with it. Well, maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't, but anyway. So the story goes like this. I met actually an American. She is a German professor at some school. I cannot even name the city, because I'm afraid it would easy be to find her out. So I met her and we went to a bar and we had a nice night, and we ended up at her place, and in the end it turned out to become a one-night stand, which I didn't want to. But what happened at the bar was that at one point I came up with this theory of that dating apps are just the $1 stores of mating material. So like the leftover ready for sale items. This is me now trying to paraphrase something I would phrase totally differently in German. That's why I'm using so strange pictures here. Anyway, okay, I said that like in a jokey way, also, right? Yeah, I mean, look who's talking. I mean, I'm sitting here too, right? And yeah, so we passed this. The night went on. We ended up at her place. A week later, I wanted to go to the movies, and I texted her and like, hey, you want to come? Blah blah blah. And then she replied, and in fact, I think I could even read this message to you, because I think it's still on WhatsApp. And then she replied, and when I read this, I could not believe it. Or maybe I deleted her number. I don't know. Anyway, okay, now this needs to fire up. Okay, anyway, what she said was basically, and I cannot remember her name. That's really a couple of years ago. Yeah, wait. There she is. God, okay, now it doesn't load on the screen. Anyway, what she said in essence was, you remember the comment that you made about people being on dating apps? That really hurt me. I talked to my psychiatrist about it, and I think I need to cut I need to cut you off, and I cannot talk to you anymore. And I was like, what? Okay, now I mean, I don't even know. I mean, man, I didn't even know back then how to react. I was like, wait a minute. There were so many things. I mean, still now it's like a brain fuck, because first of all, this woman, I mean, apparently by academic credentials, you can tell she was not from the stupid kind. She was a professor, still is. And I thought, is this so hard to work through mentally, by understanding that I didn't mean this as an insult? And again, I mean, I said it before, look who's talking. I brought it up. I'm on a dating app too. I'm also $1 store material. And secondly, to be honest, back then I thought about it this is actually a scientifically very interesting finding. Our dating apps, the leftover, the basket that kind of catches all the leftovers, and then this is where you do your shopping in.
Yeah.
And she didn't, apparently she couldn't pick that up. I mean, German study is something else than coming from a social study perspective, but I still find this is an interesting issue, which is basically closely connected to what we're talking about today, and maybe even like the beginning of it, like, okay, who is actually there, before asking. And this is what one of the studies that you dug up looked upon, right? Before asking, what does it do with us that we're online dating? We should ask, who's there? What's the I don't know the English term here. What's the group of people that we're looking at? Because this might be selective. It might be that there are only assholes there. So basically it would be the asshole mating zone. Fine. Finally a solution for that problem. But all I'm saying is we don't know what group it is, right? And
the asshole mating zone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's how I would call it. I think I opened a new dating app. It's called AMZ. Yeah, I was like, man, lady, what's wrong? And I and then there's some other layer to this. This is something I haven't thought about it before. And the layer would be, if you're coming up with such a strong argument for why you don't want to be in contact anymore, this is no more, I think I would say, about I just want to get out of this. Because you could just say like, hey, I'm sorry, we had a nice time, but I think it's not okay, bye. Right? But coming up with such a story. So and then this now brings me to what I actually wanted to say is, why can't you say this in person? Because this sounds like something that is worth to talk about. You know what I'm saying? I mean, of course, I'm now projecting or interpreting a lot of things into this short message, into the psyche or the character of a woman that I met basically for a day. The story, it was so unusual. It still stuck to my mind. I will never forget this incident.
Yeah.
So I was like, I thought then, okay, and now if we're going on this level, sorry, this would be my last sentence. If we're going on this level, then the question would also, of course, be, what does this reaction tell me about that woman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
In what I said earlier about my experience that there's a lot of sociopaths, that's my...
Would you do me a favor and define sociopath first and for everybody else?
Somebody who's like extremely lacking in empathy, who functions from a place of being exploitative and dishonest, who will almost do anything to manipulate and get exactly what they want. And interactions tend to be, it's less about like vulnerability and connection and more about like, how can I game this or gamify it? There's like strategy and manipulation. And it's more about like, how can I trick this woman into thinking I want something more, when it's really just about like, how can I convince her that she wants to have sex with me, essentially. Like that is repeatedly something I've encountered over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And also someone who is so lacking in empathy that they don't see, in my perspective, when you first engage with somebody on a dating app and you've had some interactions, there's a responsibility, a mutual responsibility toward each other, to acknowledge that there's actually an attachment that's starting to form. And to be mindful of that. It's not just like, oh, well, we're not together, so I can basically do whatever I want and say whatever I want, and it doesn't matter, right? We are mutually impacting each other. And I find people who are more sociopathic in the way I'm speaking about it, it appears they kind of have no capacity to truly attach to people and don't understand that element of relationship, that humans attach to each other, they bond, and they don't just use each other. And I feel like the more sociopathic stuff is like just getting really heavily objectified by men, and getting heavily sexualized, and even some interactions start off very quickly going right to like really disgusting things that they're saying, where I'm like, whoa, what? Oh my gosh, like it is completely out of context. There was no invitation whatsoever. You know, and I say sociopathic, but really like it's a spectrum. And I think anything looking at sociopathy, looking at narcissism, looking at like the dark triad, you know, it's all stuff that exists on a spectrum. And I do think we all have some of these traits in certain contexts, right? And there's certain contexts that are ripe for bringing this further out of us, like it perpetuates us expressing these traits or this way of being. And I think I have a sense that online dating actually promotes the expression of these traits and rewards them in a lot of ways. And that people that are maybe, because I don't know them, appearing very sociopathic, if I met them in another context, maybe they wouldn't be like this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be definitely a sociological aspect. I mean, okay, this is just like thinking in boxes, right? But the context. I mean, there are theories out there, frame theory, for frame analysis, for example, from Goffman, stuff like this. Of course, the context makes people behave differently. The interesting thing now here is that, to be honest, we have context now in first order and second order, because back in the days, let's make the simplification for the matter of the point. Back in the days, you had only the chance to actually meet in a first order context, and that is you meeting in real life, meeting the actual person, either if it's by like deliberately or by accident. And this now has changed. So my point is, you meet somebody in another context, which, I mean, for the matter of, I'm taking now only the character of the characteristics or the category of time as the denominator for what's the first context, what's the second. So you're meeting someone in the first context, the first circumstance, degree, online, and then later, and you have interaction. That's a difference. It's different than maybe a pen pal kind of situation would be similar if you meet someone through a newspaper ad, and then you're like writing back and forth, this would be the only similarity. But I mean, frankly, that didn't happen so much, but online dating is happening. So the quantity definitely speaks much louder here than with newspaper ads, I think. And then you meet somebody in the second degree context, and the interesting question now is, how much does the first degree context, because that set you on the rails in this relationship, how does this impact the second degree context? And
sorry,
that's all cool. It's okay. Yeah, you're excited. I can understand.
I was like,
so I want something to say. Please stop me if this is going too long, because this is now this is really interesting, because the question then is, well, from my personal experience, I think it's getting very complex. And I
Yeah.
probably, my feeling just tells me the answer to how the first degree impacts the second degree context is probably as manifold as there are people out there.
Yeah.
But what I noticed from my experience is when I meet somebody, the page is blank. And the page is blank, especially, or that's why I'm bringing it up, although, that's what I want to say, although I know or have seen the profile of this very person. So I noticed by myself, and I think it's a good thing, to be honest. When I'm meeting someone, I look at the person, I meet her, hello, this is Chris, and so forth. Profile is gone. This person, I mean, my mind, my head starts putting up a new category or folder. I mean, I hate those technical references, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, my brain starts with a new person there that has nothing to do with this profile. Even the profile is so far away, I cannot even, I mean, I can connect it mentally, but my mind is not there to do this. This is what I find interesting. I'm not doing it. It's just I had to concentrate to do it. Other people like, oh yeah, you read this, you wrote this in your profile. I have to remember, what did I write in my profile? What I'm saying is, I don't really feel that I'm on a certain rail there that was determined by the dating app.
But that's the thing though, is like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's, you know, when we talk about like self-selection or self-selecting, like in psychology, we talk about like what determined the participant pool that you have, right? Like, how did you recruit participants? How did you end up with this group of people to look at, right? And I look at dating apps and I look at who is self-selecting to be on dating apps, right? And I feel like what you're demonstrating with your own context you're coming to apps with is that you're not just there to use the features of the app to consume as many sexual experiences as you can with a woman. Like, that does not come through as immediately being your motivation, right? You did not end up on this app, on these apps for that purpose. Maybe sexual encounters is a part of it, but like, or it is a part of it, but you know, when I talk about context, it's like there is this very unique context created through dating apps that allows people who have nefarious motivations to end up on it and to utilize it in a way that works best for them to manipulate. And you know, it's interesting. I think apps, the way they're set up is you can go through so many people. There's always the promise of another person, another conquest. They're set up in a certain way where only until recently have there been any measures towards accountability on these apps. Like, you can have this really wild, horrible behavior, both online and offline. And it's just recent that apps have been like, oh, you can report people. Or like, people can actually get banned. But even so, to actually end up on these apps, there are no accountability measures. You can be anybody. You could be anybody getting on here. And I think that is a context piece, right? Like, these are contexts where when you enter an environment where you can do unlimited scrolling, you can go through tons of people, you can know, but you're not connected to community that's going to really hold you accountable for the behaviors you're having, like in person, right? So if you meet somebody, for instance, you know, in your little neighborhood and you're all connected to the same people, if you're acting like a complete asshole, everybody finds out. Everybody knows what you're doing, right?
Sure.
But online apps give you an opportunity to, like, I mean, there are some apps that, you know, say, hey, you're connected to this person on Facebook, or I don't know if they still do that, but when I first joined, there were some of them that did that.
Yeah,
But
there's no network being
yeah,
displayed. Yeah.
it's like completely removed from community and accountability through community. You know, you can send like these really lewd messages, and
You
there's
can
no
send
way.
dick pics, nobody cares.
Yeah,
I mean, not in the sense of you being sanctioned
yeah,
by the world.
yeah, you know, and
Yeah.
it's sad that a woman has to go through receiving the dick pic and the
Mm,
experience of that before you get banned or reported, or she may not even ban or report you, you know, and you just,
sure.
how many, the men who are like this, how many pics are they sending out? Like what, but this is an environment that's just kind of like, there's no immediate, there's nothing that's immediately holding them accountable that would stop them from wanting to select to be on the app in the first place or rein in their behaviors, right?
Yeah.
It's almost become like this game. So I think it's bringing out this like addictive, gamey, exploitative way of being that, granted, I think some of these men in person would equally would just be horrible too. But like, and I think this idea you have about us being like the leftovers or the dollar store items. I mean, I would like to think that I'm not one of those folks, but I think statistically speaking, if you look at who is in the dating pool in the 30s, 40s, and up, you know, when you look at mates, partner selection or mating behaviors in populations, like it would make most sense that the people who are pairing up are securely attached. And then the people who are, I mean, there's research on this, the people who are not pairing up are insecurely attached and have a lot of trauma and need
Mm,
some time to work through it and heal. Some of them don't heal. Some of them don't work through it. So it's like those of us on the dating apps are the ones who like had a lot of attachment trauma likely and
yeah.
needed to learn some things about dating, have some
Yep.
self-esteem issues or self-concept issues. Um, and you know, some of us are wounded and working on ourselves, and then some of us are wounded and really not working on
Yeah.
ourselves. But I
And
think
this
the
is
app encourages the wounded not working on yourselves type people to
mm,
be even worse, in my opinion.
yeah. And I mean, this is probably the explanation why that professor freaked out so much.
Yeah.
Because I was holding up a mirror. I was basically saying, you know, here's somebody talking with a lot of what was the term again? Insecure, no,
Insecure attachment.
insecure attachment issues for good reasons. And you're probably having them too.
Yeah.
I mean, and then if I want more proof, she was citing her psychiatrist. I mean, okay, hello. So she is in treatment, which is a good thing. My point just being that that I probably hit a really, really red button there, right?
Well, I mean,
So
I mean, there's also a layer we have to
unintentionally.
skip. Yeah, I
Pardon
mean,
me?
unintentionally. But that's the thing, though. It's like there's even trauma that I think I know for myself. I've definitely been traumatized by using apps. Like, it has actually made
Yeah,
dating
okay, well,
much
that's okay.
harder for
Well,
me.
I'm talking
So,
about traumas that happened earlier before the
yeah,
apps.
but I think it's combined. Like that's part of what's I think going on is I've already got my own attachment trauma I'm working through, but I think I get
Are
the
you
sense that
saying
it's
that the
creating like it's
$1 store mating pool is basically reliving their youth by going to dating apps where they can have another trauma experience?
I mean, that is a way you could frame it.
It's a little bit cynical, but I mean, to me, it makes sense for from a certain angle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to like not keep replaying these things. However, like, you know, despite trying to heal my attachment wounding and act from a space of secure attachment where I'm, you know, being clear in my communication, I'm working on emotion regulation, I'm trying to be very accountable for my own stuff, you know, really trying to be from in a more secure space. I feel like dealing with people who are manipulative, exploitative, extremely lacking in empathy, you know, these inconsistent, incongruent people, that are chaotic in a way, like it does hit on those wounds, and it
Sure.
triggers that early attachment stuff. And I think it's added to some of it for me. Like, I am much less, I look at my whole dating history and my use of apps. The way I approached dating before there were apps, or before apps were popular, I feel like I was way more trusting of people. I was way more likely to give people the benefit of the doubt. I was able to be a little bit more curious. And some people will be like, oh, well, this is just a woman aging and ending up in having baggage, right? But I actively work on myself all the time. And it's like, what's to be said for, I've worked on my baggage, but engaging in dating in the context that it happens is actually giving me more baggage. Like, it's
I see. Yeah, I see. Well, okay, here's the I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I just feel like I want to reflect the flip side of it, if you will, in positive terms, because the first part of this flip side would be these online dating apps are getting us in contact with people we would never ever get in contact with. Never ever. I mean, not me. I wouldn't. I met people I'm pretty sure I would have never met other than through these kind of apps.
True.
And some of them became friends. Some, I mean, yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is the bottom line would be here for this first point. I met a lot of cool people and a lot more shitty ones, but there is some benefit to it.
Oh,
Okay?
totally, there is.
So and then the second part is I also, and this is now a little bit twofold when it comes to evaluating it and connecting it with your what you just said and with your experience. Because I might have been one of these narcissistic guys. Like I said, because I tried myself out, and this is at the same time a positive thing for me because I could learn about myself a lot, which I would have not been able to do, at least and definitely not to the extent that I did it. Because I would have never met so many women that I could get in a close contact to and talk to, as I did, and also sexually, to be fair, because that was a big part of this trying myself out and understanding myself. And along the way, because I just want to put this say this briefly for just to give an idea of how important this was me, because this had to do with overcoming fear, overcoming shame, understanding emotions, understanding what connection is, being in contact with my emotions, trusting them in terms of is my impression correct? And of course, I mean, back in the days, even more, because I wasn't up there yet in terms of empathy and stuff. So I could only be sure if the same thing happened the other time and it turned out the same way. With a different person, though, I mean, that's the problem with all social studies. You can't repeat the experiment. But the benefit, I mean, my therapist back in the day, she would be proud. I really tried myself out.
When you say find yourself out, it's like we don't have a saying like that in English. So trying myself out is like did some self-discovery and kind of got to really test out who you are. And
I get it. Let me just okay, I want to look for the word here. Just because I understand what you're saying, and that I'm on the wrong track here. Okay, Interesting, because it says to try something. Okay, yeah, ausprobieren. Okay, so what I want to say in German is sich ausprobieren, and there's something coming up that says like to woodshed. Okay, on instrument. All right, on an instrument.
Woodshed?
Yeah. Okay, to woodshed is apparently the term of trying the instrument. So it's
Oh,
only for instruments. It's colloquial, but interesting that there's a term for this. Yeah.
so it's like having an experience, like through experience learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also the German term sich ausprobieren also has the connotation of testing something.
Okay.
Okay, so you're testing yourself, like how am I, not in terms of challenge and you have a goal, but like what's happening? I'm just, I'm just putting this, my testing the water
Okay.
is
Testing.
probably a good term.
Okay.
Testing the water. How is it? How does it feel? How
Yeah.
does this feel? How's that?
Yeah.
How do I do when I try this? Blah blah blah.
So to get perspective too, like
Yeah,
I relate to what a lot of the things you're saying, like
yeah,
online dating has allowed me to get so many different experiences and a lot of perspective and
yeah,
get to experience like, who am I in this context with this type of person? What are the
yeah.
things I like? What are the things I don't like? What really turns me on? What doesn't? Stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
And we really don't know these things unless we go through experience.
And exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, and this is probably an unbeatable argument for online dating,
Yeah.
because it opens up an entire world of potential connections that you would have never had
Yeah.
if you hadn't gone there, because and this is again a sociological aspect here, because it's a total it's breaking up oh god, another word I have to look up. Wait a second. It's breaking up. Man, my typing is there. It is. Yeah, the milieu. Also in English, the same term. I wasn't sure. So yeah, the environment.
Yeah.
Your social environment. It's breaking up those kind of realms, because all of a sudden you can pinch through your bubble and
Yeah.
end up in a total different realm. There's funnily enough, there's a theory about this. I don't know if it comes from social theory, but it got to my attention in the Corona context, because this German Corona expert, actually like one of the world leading figures in that area, he talked about it briefly when he had this podcast back then, when like there's this one bubble and there's this other bubble, and now if people like transcending between these two bubbles, then they can bring the virus there, and this can now then spread into other bubbles. So there's a word for this, and this is what dating apps are doing. They're pinching through these bubbles.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
they're bringing people together that would have never been in the
Yeah.
same room, let alone at the same table drinking drinks together. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, that's part of the reason why I've been excited or interested in dating apps. But I
Mm.
do find that you have to orient to apps from this position. Both parties need to be doing that. Otherwise, the encounter doesn't last very long. like, like what I'm hearing you say is like, it's a growth mindset, right? Like
Yeah.
you have a growth mindset in the way that you're orienting. And I do too. However, when I go into these apps and I'm assuming that everybody else has a growth mindset too, that is not, it's just not a reflection of reality. I found that most people on these apps are not in a growth mindset perspective around relationship. And it's more about like, what can I take and how much attention can I get and how can I feed my own ego in this sort of space, right? It's this entitlement space of, ooh, it's like going to a candy store. I'm gonna steal the candy, rather than like, how can I actually learn through an intimate exchange?
Sure. I mean,
Learn
but
through
this all,
exchange, right?
but isn't that like asking a lot from the individual on a very general level already?
I mean, I think there's yes and no.
I mean, why I'm saying
I,
this is,
I
go ahead.
okay, so the way I look at it, like if I look at this behaviorally, look at it from the frame of behavioral psychology, there are ways, I really do think that humans, we are, certain traits get brought out of us more, or certain desires or certain behaviors based on what is reinforced and what is not. And when you have a context where compulsive, impulsive behaviors are reinforced through the context, it's not a reflective or self-reflective context. Like it doesn't promote that. You get, in many ways, you get more rewards on this app, on these apps, from being someone who is more compulsive or more impulsive. Like you have more meetings, you have more encounters, you match with more people, you end up spending more time on there to get exposure to more people. And then also with the way dating apps have sped up the rate at which we're meeting people and interacting with people, like it doesn't encourage like this sort of dropping in, waiting to sort of build an experience with someone type encounter. It's more like charm, spark, let's see what's here. Oh, it's not here, bye. And I do think behaviorally, we are training ourselves to look more for the spark, to have somebody who like looks to be above the rest, to be able to make a decision when we've got.
Are you talking about love at first sight?
I think a lot of people are looking for a love at first sight experience on the apps. At least a lot of the men I've encountered, they're looking for a love at first sight experience. They're looking for a lot of lust and sexual chemistry right off the bat.
Yeah, sure. I'm talking. That's why I said love, because you're talking. I mean, you're talking about something that can also happen in real life. You meet somebody and sparks are flying.
Yeah.
And you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that dating apps are promoting this perspective on how an encounter should happen.
Well, it's creating. I mean, I've noticed it in myself as well as seen it in other people, creating sort of this like addictive, like impulsive, emotionally impulsive space that doesn't necessarily put to the forefront. Like it's kind of at odds in a lot of ways with taking the more like gradual approach to getting to know somebody and building things like actual safety with the person, actual trust through experiences over time. And it's privileged really fast sexual experiences. Like that's become a normal cultural thing I think with apps. It's like hookup culture has become so common that I find I encounter men now, the men I encountered now on the apps versus the men I encountered 10 years ago. The men I encountered 10 years ago could fathom going on a first date, second, third, fourth date, and not having sex. The men I'm encountering now on dating apps, they're almost offended if you don't want to do something sexual on the first date or have sex. And there's this almost entitlement of like, well, we have to see what chemistry we have. Like we have to see if we're sexually compatible, to see if this works. And there's such a strong emphasis on like how important it is to see early on, because otherwise,
interesting. Yeah.
And I think these men, if they were in a context where it was promoted for them to take their time and to have more of a growth perspective, to have more of an orientation where you're learning from each other, you're growing, there's kind of like this organic interaction that's about the whole person, they would have I think different traits would be brought out of them, or different traits would be brought out of people in general, right?
Well, let's learn from American Pie here for a second. Yeah, this is exactly the facial expression I wanted to see. You've seen that movie?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's yeah, sure. But you will remember that line that I'm bringing up right now. You remember that one couple, I think the one is this, sorry, the lacrosse player whose name I think is Chris. And the other, the girl, is the blonde one played by Mira Sorvino, I think is her name, who also starred in American Beauty. And they're having a conversation that all of a sudden evolves the term to score. And then the conversation, the lines end with him saying, because I know I already won. I don't need to score because I feel like I already won. I think that's what he's saying. And they, of course, I mean, they go to high school together, I think it is, and of course they meet each other and see each other often and have seen each other often before that comes up. But still, the argument stands because they haven't had slept together yet. And my point is that this really resonated with me in terms of like, yeah, this is what I want to feel when I meet the right woman, which is, it feels right. I don't need to fight because I know I already won her. And I think what I'm suggesting here is maybe we shouldn't talk so much about narcissist guys and how they're bad and how they're exploiting people and so forth. We should probably talk more about what enables people in order to be able to connect with the other person so that they can feel there is the connection that they're safe with to be in a sound and healthy relationship in the end. Because what this guy is actually, what Chris is saying in the movie actually means like, I already feel there's a bond. And it's there and I can't deny it. Of course, I don't want to deny it. And it's solid. It carries. And forgive me by adding a minor thing now, because right now I very strongly have to think about this show that I love, which is Too Hot to Handle.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I mean, I had really a lot of discussions with friends. I mean, okay, this is we can talk about Too Hot to Handle. I would really love to do this because I think it fits in here perfectly.
Yeah.
But my point is, and of course, you know why I'm thinking about it, because there always comes to the term up having more sound and healthy relationships. I think that's what they're saying. Yeah. So my point is that these guys, yes, they are on there, and their problem, if you will, lies somewhere else. It's, of course, they are narcissists and everything, but apparently they have not experienced something like that, I think, because otherwise they would know, yeah, this is not the relation that I want, because I'm only interested sexually in this woman. And the other side being, I don't need to make her go to bed tonight with me, because it'll happen. Not now, but it will, because I can feel it, it will. So, yeah.
I mean, I hear you about wanting to talk about like the things that help people actually form solid bonds with each other. And then also, I guess, looking at the Too Hot to Handle participants is kind of like a study, right? Like,
Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah.
When I watch the show, I'm like,
yeah,
I just feel
too.
Go ahead.
But you know, the thing is it's interesting how a lot of these guys are having these major realizations to them about women being humans that have feelings, and women are also having that experience to some extent too. But it's been amazing to watch that if they're in the right context, right? Like if they're in an environment that's encouraging you to have a growth mindset and teaching you how to have a growth mindset and teaching you self-reflection, and it's socially acceptable to be in that space, right? You're in an environment where ego and narcissism are not the thing that's being promoted, but actually they're saying, hey, what about your own deeper development? What about empathy? What about your capacity to build an emotionally intimate relationship, right? So being in that environment, it is amazing how these people that appear to be pretty narcissistic start to learn. They start to shift, right? And granted, there's some, there's some argument there about like how much of this is acting and how much do they revert right back to the same old stuff, and how much of this is a manipulation to win a prize or whatever. But
Yeah.
you
And
know,
how much is this just a stay in a short-term hospital?
right, exactly. But I do think that what they're learning is like how to slow down enough in an interaction and have enough experiences in different contexts with somebody where you can truly see if there's compatibility. How to slow down enough where you get to explore, like, what is it to learn how to have these deeper conversations. And I mean, they're there. My impression is, from what I've seen, is they don't have phones or computers. Like literally, they have no media distractions. And for the first time ever, probably in all of their lives, they're there just to relate and interact. I have some qualms about the fact that that is such a heavy alcohol-laden show. I think that they should do a sober show of
Sure.
Like, I want to see
they're
what
taking the
that's
only
like.
legal drug that's left.
Yeah. I think I want to see what it's like to have a Too Hot to Handle that's sober, and see how much more people are growing, right?
Too Hot to Handle, the sober edition.
But I mean, I think it wouldn't have the amount of drama that would, or maybe it would have drama, but it would just be like a different type, right? Like people wouldn't be breaking the rules as much, or there'd just be more self-reflection, I think, more depth. So, what audience are they catering to? I don't know if the normal population would even be interested in that. But they are learning the basics in that show about how to form an actual long-term relationship, right? Like, how do you communicate? How do you stay accountable? Because most of these folks, they've lived in environments where they don't have to be accountable. They lived in environments where they just ghost somebody or walk away, burn a bridge. But if you burn a bridge and you've got 2 weeks more, or I don't know how long they're on the island or whatever, but you've got 2 weeks more and you're
4 weeks, I
a
think.
Little compound with somebody, like, that's really uncomfortable. You have to actually face yourself. You're getting, it's almost like group therapy. Like, you're getting all the time this direct feedback.
It is group therapy.
Yeah.
It is group therapy.
Yeah. So, I think, to ground what you're saying, like to answer what you're saying, or asking, like, how to create like a solid, positive bond and relationship is, we need to be able to have, first off, create communities or friendship environments around self-reflection and around giving feedback to each other. I think a lot of men in particular, based on many different factors, don't build adequate community, and they're not getting feedback from their male friends about, like, hey, dude, why did you do that? Like, that's not okay what you did. You could try this instead. Or if they are getting feedback, it's more like, oh yeah, great, I'm so happy you had sex with her, good job, high five. And I mean, I'd also say for women,
that's exactly how boys talk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or I'd say for women, it's like, some of this stuff also happens and I'm speaking about this in terms of hetero dynamics, but I think it can also extend in some ways to queer, gay, and lesbian environments too, as well as people with who are non-binary. But essentially surrounding yourself with groups of people that actually want to grow and are encouraging you to reflect on yourself, I think is really important. And that's, I think, a fundamental thing missing for a lot of folks is they're not in environments where people are honest with each other, or where people are even interested in accountability, right? Like it's just like, oh, that's right, he got what he deserved, or that's right, she got what she deserved, or they got what they deserved. And it's like, well, I think in order for us to build those deeper connections, we do need to have an environment that holds us accountable to some degree. Like it can't just be our own, even for myself, like my orientation naturally has always been to really want to hold myself accountable. However, I've got tons of blind spots. If I'm just depending on my own perceptions, there's like this way that I don't see fundamental elements of the way I'm engaging in the world problematic.
Okay, thank you, because I just have a great thought. It's coming now. I just want to say as a side comment, I'm surprised how I'm much holding up the positive side of online dating here. It seems a little bit like I'm trying to put a lot. I mean, it's not a complaint. I'm just surprised that I mean, me being the biggest criticizer in the world.
Yeah,
but,
it's interesting. In our dynamic, I'm usually the one being in the more positive frame, but
yeah. See, I've already learned from you. So the point is that I had to put this down because I found it so important. Maybe these guys will have their social accountability coming, but we're just not there yet. What do I mean by this? I mean that the positive side of these online dating apps is, with extra steps, of course, that we're now talking about the state of society when it comes to dating. We're basically, okay, the extra steps, I have to explain this, is because it's a debate that's happening in private. Okay, now we're talking about it. But a lot of people will only talk about it on parties with their friends in a private situation. Yeah, how was your online dating experience? Blah, 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 blah. But this might be just the first step to a more broader, open, public discussion, which then means, if you think it through, will put the issue on the table of what is the state, the average state of a woman, of a man, of whoever sex you are, when you are entering the dating game. How mature, to use this word right here, at that point, are you when it comes to forming healthy and durable and so forth and stable relationships? And I think, in other words, dating apps will then, with hindsight, have helped a lot with accessing this question, and maybe even coming up with a lot of data about it, because because people can talk about their experiences with these apps. Either they are the narcissist or they aren't, but you will get both sides of it. And then society will strike in terms of, then we have the debate. Then it turns out, oh man, you cannot be like this, but not in a sense, of course, I mean, you know this better than I do, being the psychologist here. Not in the sense like, we're going to punish you now for your bad behavior, but in the sense of, you need to do these kind of steps in order to get out of your narcissistic shithole there, because it's not serving you also, does it?
Yeah.
And so, in other words, this is again water on my mills when it comes to to what I'm saying for a long time. We should talk about sexuality more openly. And because we don't do it, we have all these assholes running around. They have no clue what they are, who they are, how they're behaving, because nobody ever tells them. And because nobody, meaning the society, is not talking about it. It's a taboo. And for that matter, they're just wandering around like narcissists on legs.
Yes. I agree. I think there needs to be more open conversation about all these things. And I mean, I see that it's good that we're through the apps being motivated to get to maybe for me, a level of desperation where I am talking a lot with people because I'm trying to figure out like what is going on.
Yeah.
You know, all these terms are being created, like ghosting and breadcrumbing and like
Or narcissism, for that matter,
yeah,
coming up into the the what's the word, the mainstream. I mean, nobody talked about narcissistic or toxic relationships 20 years ago because it
yeah,
wasn't a thing. I
yeah,
mean, not that it's a thing now, but you know what I mean. So this is already part of the broader education that I'm talking about here.
yeah. I mean, even the term fuckboy, like I don't think I saw that until apps came out. You know, like all these different, and the social media, like
Yeah. Okay.
Instagram, Facebook,
Mm.
I think, well, it's like us being able to organize on a much larger level globally to be able to discuss these patterns in human behavior that we're observing. But
Yeah.
also, I think because we're organizing in these larger ways globally, we're also reinforcing certain patterns, some negative patterns of human behavior that we're in commentary about. But hopefully, we can take it in the other direction, right? Like
Yeah.
these larger apps or platforms being created for us to connect need to have some level of accountability built into them to, I think, promote better elements of human behavior or thought or
Ah.
perception, right?
I don't know because I mean the app is just the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? If we're talking about the driver.
Well, okay, for instance, I want to
Yeah.
ground what I'm saying. Like looking at what happened on Facebook with the use of the algorithms around what media is shown to people,
Yeah.
Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And who sees
The bubble.
their friends' media? Like it
Yeah.
becomes this like
Bubble.
echo chamber,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So looking at the way logarithms and AI have been oriented to get people to keep clicking on things to get more reads or views. This is what I'm talking about. Is like that same stuff is applied to the structure of dating apps too.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
I'm not
they're
aware.
working fundamentally with like how do we get people to stay on the app longer, like both
Ah,
during the day as well each day during, as well as how do you get them to be a revisit, to keep revisiting the app, to pay for the structures, to
sure.
pay
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
different features.
Yeah.
And like these apps are not created ultimately to help you find somebody.
Ah, okay.
They're created actually to play on this addictive compulsive
Sure.
pattern.
Because then you lose a customer. If you
Yeah.
find someone, you lose a
You
customer.
know, and I mean, I think this really, a lot of this conversation, you look at the largest, one of the largest contexts is capitalism, right?
Yeah.
And the way that these apps are businesses that are structured in order to get resources from us, time, energy, attention, money, to get these things from us and control our behavior in a certain way in order to keep
Mm.
controlling that from us and to get us to participate in culture and society in a way that helps us be good workers or helps us continue to promote the society that we're in, right?
Yeah.
So it's dating apps are not, dating apps are
Yeah.
in that too, in the way
I
they're
get it. I get it, but I mean but I don't really see the connection between them trying to make money as much as possible, and not being interested actually in you finding your right mate, to that they're what is the current status quo of uh, maturity in the population.
Mhm.
I mean, because I mean, these are, first of all, the latter is something a dating app can never solve, I would say. So there's much more going on in the department of education, upbringing, your parents, role models, so forth. We had to have a short break here for a personal reason. So I was talking about the aspect of narcissists bubbling up to the surface and basically now being or the entire problematic or problems of being mature when it comes to relationships and everything, and everything that is connected with it. So upbringing, your education, parents, and so forth. And now, with hindsight, you can say that dating apps helped gather the data. And
Yeah.
I had one thought. Now I know exactly what I wanted to say when we had to stop, and that was that the very interesting finding will be if there is a cross-cultural similarity. I mean, you've dated people like all over the world. In a
Yes.
nutshell, I use my dating apps everywhere I go, in the States, here in European countries, in East Asia, Southeast Asia, um, and uh, and uh, and I think the primary finding will be devastating in the sense of, oh man, it's so bad everywhere, because I think worldwide it's a global issue. I mean, it's not, I cannot even name a culture where it's like, oh yeah, this culture is really dealing very soundly with sexuality and relationship and so forth. Why are you laughing? This is actually, I'm talking about terrible stuff.
Because it's so true. Like I had the fantasy of like, oh, well, if I just don't like dating Americans, I'll date Mexicans, or I'll date different people from European countries, or from all around the world. Everybody has these same issues. And I was like, oh, there aren't these like much better men over here or people over here, in the sense of like everyone has attachment issues. We have to really address
Yeah.
so many layers of trauma.
So
All of
in the end, we have to be thankful to the narcissists, assholes, because they push this kind of research issues, aspects to the surface, because so many partners, I mean, mostly women, and this is another interesting thing. Why is it that so many men are like this? And so what I'm saying is, the world seems to be united in relationship-wise incapability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's very disappointing. I'm disappointed.
It's disappointing on the one hand, but at the same time, isn't it amazing that we're, I mean, this kind of feeds into something like a global identity.
Yeah.
It's all of us, and we're all kind of affected. Of course, we can leave out those happy few that leave without relationship.
Yeah.
But again, my point is that I mean, this is going to bring us right on the track to world peace, because if we're all more aware of what we are, who we are, and what made us who we are, and about our upbringing and everything, and becoming then more kinder people,
Yeah.
it's world peace. So if you be able to pinpoint those aspects that had to be in a dating app in order to overcome those kind of things or deal with it better, I mean, the Nobel Peace Prize is yours.
Yeah. Well, I have actually had an idea about a dating app that I think would work better, but I don't want to bring it up in the context of here just yet. But
yeah,
yeah,
next
I
time.
agree. Like there's, from the darkness, from the pain, from the trauma, we have an opportunity to like bring it all to the surface and work with it and heal together. But I also think that's if we choose that path, right? Like, can we choose together collectively to see the importance in going toward accountability, self-awareness, compassion, empathy, as opposed to going to like compensation for insecurity and shame and fear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also what accounts for there being such a big split. Like there are these, I feel like the world has people that are like, well, I don't want to put it just into two categories. We're all split in certain ways, but you know, how can we become really aware of how we are the problem? Like we create the problem, we participate in the problem, and how to get really accountable there, and how to create systems altogether and apps even in these systems that promote us having that awareness and that type of engagement, which is a question I don't really know how to answer at the moment. I'm still in inquiry about it. But I agree with you. Like there's a great opportunity here.
And I mean, I would say the width of the corridor that opens up here is, I mean, can hardly be overestimated, because we're touching, it touches so many other issues, and maybe that might be a good point to wrap this talk up, because we're getting to the end of it. Since I immediately had to think about the dealing with collective trauma, and the ability and the sensitivity for contexts like this. And when you, I know for a fact from one of my former therapists, she was a psychoanalyst, and she said the societies of analysts in Germany, they try to push for decades that the German society, the German people need to work through the trauma of World War II. And it hadn't happened. And I can picture it, although I have never really met somebody from the German parliament who served in the war, for example. But I can really picture it, how these guys dealt with everything else except for where this country came from emotionally and has been hit emotionally, and what that had an impact on our culture. Even I have this really weird theory, which is, you know, Germans are so precise and correct with everything, because it's actually a strategy for coping with the trauma. It's actually a collective obsessive compulsive disorder. So the German car is just an outcome of obsessive compulsive disorder.
Oh my gosh, that is so true.
When every time the bus is on time in Germany, you should be reminded of obsessive compulsive disorder in this country. Nah, this thing has to be perfect. I don't want to deal with my emotions. I better make the perfect screw. There you go.
Fun. Let's talk more about this at some other point.
German culture in a nutshell. I mean, I think, I don't know where this is going to end, or go to, or lead to, but I think we've touched a lot of issues that we might get back into next time.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, my pleasure. Thank you for making this possible.
Go
Exactly. Thank you to everybody who was watching this at one point after we released it, and I hope that we could generate some interest for further episodes of this thing here, with two people talking over the Atlantic, in fact. Touching the Pacific, even. All right.
I second that.
Okay.
All
so
right.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Until next time.
Until next time.